Hey guys, it's Spidey here. I am super tired. It is almost 10 o'clock at night, and I have been struggling to make this first podcast video. But my friends Lad, Shine, and myself are all working together to bring you guys a podcast that can focus on some really tough decisions and some fun ones as well. We are hoping to tackle as our first subject matter ethics and the alignment of humanity, discovering the very different philosophical concepts that surround human ethics and where it comes from and how we can ultimately determine exactly how we should live our lives. So we are going to be covering this first episode, tackling these questions from biblical perspectives, fictional ones, historical ones, and scientific ones, hopefully so that we can arrive at a consensus that remains within sound doctrine and does not deviate from a good and biblical standing. So here we go. This is going to be our first episode. Enjoy. So this is going to be our first podcast episode. So this is the Pals podcast. Yes, that's what we're calling it. And
I'm currently cosplaying as Kakashi Sensei.
yes, that's Lad. Say hi, Lad.
Hello, my name is Lad.
Shine is the guy making monkey sound effects back there. And
I'm Shine. I'm eating Frosted Flakes.
I am Spidey, and I am currently trying to not collapse from the mental pressure that I am putting on myself. Okay, so today we're going to be going over part one in about a 6-part, maybe 7-part series, and this will be our introduction to our new podcast, and we'll be tackling a series of moral issues. We're going to start off with lawful good. The entire series, the first part of the series will be on the alignment of humanity. So we'll be going from lawful good into all of the different alignments that people normally set themselves up in. Shane is wearing a...
Yes, it was a very good idea to add Shine.
Yeah, Shane is wearing a bear hat. Okay.
We are the embodiments of lawful, neutral, and chaotic right now.
Yeah. Okay, so, Lad, why don't you explain exactly what we're going to be covering? At least explain lawful goodness, and then we'll go into it and really touch on our opinions, and then we'll go into the actual facts of what it is.
So, I had completely had this all covered, but now that you're recording, I can't do it, even though we just talked about this yesterday.
Yeah.
So, lawful good is you follow your own or a set code or rules that you have for yourself, and you follow them with good intentions. And I cannot think of a good explanation because I am nervous.
Okay. So while Lad collapses from stage fright, I will explain I'll give a basic example. So from a certain perspective, lawful good technically requires that an individual follow a set of rules that either they hold to be true or that they sort of have been taught over the course of their life. Basically, lawful good refers to a person's belief system in a concrete way. So, we actually covered a lot in about an hour and a half the other day on this subject, and so it's kind of difficult to recall everything because we like to at least have a refresher course before we come into these. But,
I was super wise last time, and this time I summarized it in one sentence.
Right, yeah. So last time was a lot of improv dialogue, and then we just kind of went into it. Shane is
posing beautifully. Yes.
Shine is killing eagles in
my
Red
favorite
Dead
sport, the harikari.
Okay, so
my favorite instrument is the shotgun, and I play it very well.
I'm glad that you're very good at this instrument. Okay, so
Spidey over here is the perfect example for lawful good.
Yeah. So okay, we basically tried to tackle these from historical and biblical perspectives yesterday. Sorry, not yesterday. That was yesterday, right?
It was yesterday.
Yeah. I'm sorry. We lose track of time really fast.
We've been
here.
on call for about 5 million hours waiting for Shine.
Yeah, to get on the call.
It was just one thing after another. When you called me, I was like, all right, I'm going to get on. And my mom's like, oh, you got a bunch more cards and a bunch more mail stuff. And I was like, well.
Okay, yeah. No, it's fine, dude. We totally get it. We know you didn't mean to hold us up like that. It's fine. And I'm not being sarcastic either. People tell me that I have a naturally...
I gave myself brain damage waiting for you. It's your fault that I'm being stupid on this podcast today.
Okay. Anyway, getting back to the subject matter. Sorry, guys. You're going to be dealing with our, foolishness on this channel. But anyway, yes. So, lawful goodness, basically...
I'm being wanted because my horse killed me off a bridge. 50 cents. People are coming to kill me for 50 cents.
Okay. Now, another thing about our show is that Shane is going to actively be frustrated, and he will be actively dying on whatever game he's playing. And so,
distracting us.
As long as he is here, you guys will get a lot of comic relief whenever the subject gets really deep and dark, which we can promise it will get there at some points.
You don't suck if you have bad luck.
Yeah.
Luck isn't a real thing.
So, okay.
Oh,
Lawful good. We kind of covered a number of fictional characters, but I tried to tackle it from the perspective of the Bible, in which lawful good kind of refers to a person's belief system in a way, because they have a set of beliefs that they've been passed on. They receive them from someone else, and so oftentimes people look at the lawfully good person as a hindrance to society. But in reality, what we covered the other day was that the reason that God kind of gives human beings law codes and that he believes in lawful good, that he created it, is because lawful good is actually good for us. It is good for us to follow rules and regulations to a degree. Should those rules and regulations call our humanity into question, should they make us do things like, worship false things, or really pay quote unquote tribute to a earthly person, then obviously that's not good. But I think that what we were really trying to cover the other day was the idea that lawful goodness is perhaps the most solid out of all of them. But really what we wanted to sort of come to a consensus on was this idea that lawful goodness, for all it is, can encompass the other two
lawful alignments.
Yeah, the other two good alignments that we are going to cover. But for this specific episode, we will only cover lawful goodness because there's a lot to unpack here. We have so many examples. And we are having a hard time
getting to it.
Right. We've got so many examples that we have to refer to, both biblically, fictionally, historically.
I'll be covering all the fictional stuff. He'll be doing the superheroes and the Bible stuff.
Yeah. And Shane will be providing us with the comedic relief as he stares at the screen.
I will answer some questions, though.
Yes, Shane will also answer questions. He's not here. Shane is not useless.
I will not try to irritate or overcome any discussion with too much of bruh. I just killed a deer with a repeater on accident.
Okay. How dare you, sir?
Okay, so a good example for lawful good alignments would be
Okay, right.
Screw you, Babby. You're just bottom of the food chain. What's up with that?
He holds it very close to himself. His beliefs in that protecting civilians is more important than protecting yourself. Protecting everyone, not just people that deserve it. But he does it all with good intentions as well. And that is the most important thing. And again, I'm too nervous to actually have any train of thought
Okay, so like basically when we covered Izuku Midoriya, which if you don't know who that is, you have been living under a rock. I'm gonna say that.
Yes.
But anyway, Izuku Midoriya has a very solid set of beliefs in terms of what it means to be a hero. He's a very by the books type of hero. But it is very refreshing to see that. Shane, do you know what we're talking about right now?
What was the guy's name?
His name
Izuku
is
Midoriya
yeah,
or Deku.
The Doma?
No,
no.
you got all of the letters wrong.
Everything you said is wrong. No, okay, so Izuku Midoriya, or so for the sake of our like horrible quality of speakers, we're just gonna refer to him as Deku. So Shane, it's
Yes.
Deku.
Deku.
Yeah.
Also, we should focus on talking to each other instead of to the recording. Just ignore that it's being recorded and we'll be able to naturally speak better.
Yes. Okay. So basically, what we ended up sort of covering was that Deku is a very by the books hero. In his world, being a hero is very much an occupation. It's a job. It's something that you do for money, which there is nothing wrong with. But in his world, it is very easy for people to get caught up in that and to treat hero work as though it's just an opportunity to make bank. And so Deku is very refreshing because he looks up to All Might, who is the number one pro in his respective universe. He's like the Superman to his universe. And All Might is a genuine hero. He wants to do the right thing because it's the right thing. He seeks to save people utilizing his awesome strength. And Deku wants nothing more than to be exactly like him. And so, in all the right ways. Deku doesn't necessarily care about the aspect of the power per se. He believes that it's amazing, but his primary focus is on the nature of what it means to truly be a hero. Now, there are some flaws with his philosophy, namely that repeatedly being injured does prevent you from being able to do your job at 100% efficiency.
Okay, you're going on too much about Deku specifically and not just his alignment.
Right, but basically, yeah, sorry, thank you for getting me back on track.
So how does his outlook and his code of rules for himself affect his life? Like use the tar monster thing as an example.
Right. Okay. So so Shane has never heard of this. So
Get back in here, tar monster.
Deku was encountered with a situation in which he needed to save his childhood bully, Kacha. And so he was in a situation in which he didn't necessarily have any of the tools required to effectively stave off or defeat the monster effectively. And
everyone else around him was like, well, I'm not able to do this.
Right.
So
we need to wait for the right person with the right superpowers to do anything.
Yes. But Deku, holding very close to him that, saving people is more important than yourself. Others are more important than you. That's his like code that he lives by. And so working with that and having good intentions with that code, he risked his own life to save somebody that doesn't actually care about him.
Right.
But that's because he follows his code.
So basically, he follows the code that he inherited from All Might, the code that you must always strive to save others. And so that is a lawfully good thing. It is a code that he did not invent for himself and that he follows because he believes it is the right thing to do. Now, from a biblical and historical standpoint, lawful good could be defined as the nature of what God intends humanity to do, meaning that, there is in essence a set law that he wants human beings to follow, and he expects them to do it, not just because it's a duty, but because he genuinely cares for it. In essence, the God of the Bible, wants entirely for everyone to be satisfied in him and to enjoy the work that he has for them, primarily because it is where they will find the most satisfaction and where he finds the most glory. And that being said, the entire law is a lawful good. It's something that he gives to human beings because he has the right to and because he wants to. And so the lawful good is something that all people need. It's something that we need because without it, we start to abuse a lot of the good things that exist in this world. Like when you think about it, without lawful good, there is a lot of chaos. There can still be some good in the world, but without a concrete reason to define what is good and what is evil, human beings begin to try and define it for themselves, which stems into a lot of the other alignments that we're going to be covering.
Good is God and evil is coleslaw.
That's true. That is actually accurate.
That is straight from the Bible.
You can have good intentions, but end up having it go badly, or just having it go many different ways.
Right,
but
like
someone with a lawful alignment, they know what they need to do because they need to follow the things they have set out for themselves or the things that somebody else has set for them. And yep, I lost my train of thought.
And that's why I'm kidnapping somebody for Tammy guys to eat.
Okay, so moral of that story, don't do what Shane is doing in real life. But anyway, the point is, so a person that follows lawful good can also make mistakes. That's very critical to understand because unfortunately people have the opinion that a lawful person is a goody two-shoes, but oftentimes you can have a perverse look at how the law is actually designed to function. For a long time, people believed that God was kind of telling them that they needed to obey a lot of aspects of the law that simply are not true for certain people. And the point of the law is actually ultimately to kind of show people that there is something fundamentally broken. And so, take, for example, there are people in the world, I think everybody can kind of recognize that the world is not exactly an ideal place. I don't think I've met many people who believe that the world is all sunshine and rainbows. And so, like,
don't ever even trust those people if you meet them in person.
Yeah.
I know the world isn't sunshine and rainbows.
All a show.
I want to make the world sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, so basically there are some people who look at the world and they say, you know what, this isn't how it should be. And then they think, we should do something extreme, like we should do something to change it. And there's nothing wrong with them. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with them. Like, oh yeah, so for example, Shane, you've never played the story mode for Red Dead, but
no.
In the story mode, the main antagonist of the story begins as someone that kind of helps your main character out. But the problem is that he believes that he's completely justified in stealing and killing from people because he thinks that he's somehow purifying the corruption that exists in America. And the reason that that's interesting is because he is right from a certain standpoint. He's right that America is in a lot of ways corrupted, but it doesn't give you the right to actively go around maiming and killing whomever you please. And so, he is approaching the situation with the mentality that there is something fundamentally flawed about the country and the world. But the way that he wants to go about fixing it is completely broken. And so a lawfully good person can even have certain codes that from a certain standpoint make sense, but when you really look at them, it's like, that's pretty twisted.
Yeah.
So I guess...
Because, good and evil are pretty much just perspective, and most people don't intend to be evil, because almost everyone thinks that what they are doing is good.
That's true,
Society.
Yeah. Like, if you are a Harry Potter fan, Voldemort and Grindelwald, Voldemort was an actual psychopath, so we can leave him out of that. But Grindelwald, he wanted to have the non-magical society be submitted underneath the wizarding world, and he killed and slaughtered people to get his way, and he went across in a more violent way, but he had very good intentions, because it would have been better for the wizards to be able to, live freely and not in fear of persecution.
Exactly.
But the way he went across it was bad, but he did have good intentions.
And so, like, really,
so
good
you
and
can be
evil...
lawful good and have the code and still be evil.
Exactly. Like, good and evil, as they are defined by God, basically refer to the core concept of self-sacrifice. which is basically the purest form of good is to really sacrifice what you have so that someone else can continue forward. And so whenever human ideology crosses the line of thinking that it's okay to sacrifice someone else for yourself, that's when you begin to veer into evil territory. And yet it can still be considered lawful good from a philosophical standpoint. The problem is that it's not actually good. Because
in your perspective it could be, but in like the morals of everyone else that look at you, they're gonna know that you're not actually a good person, even though you believe that what you're doing is the right thing.
I mean, there have been people throughout history who, you know, when racism becomes too prevalent, they start thinking, okay, well then in retaliation, let's be racist against the people that are, you know, being racist against us. And while that's an understandable viewpoint, meaning that it makes sense that you would have that response, it's not okay, because
that only just creates more racism that you're trying to fight for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you are increasing the problem because you're not focusing on the actual one, which is the fundamental damage that occurs in the human heart. So, like,
player nerdy.
lawful good from a biblical standpoint can be done right if the person is adhering to the concrete morals that God kind of sets. And the Bible does state that God sets his law in men's hearts, which means that everyone has a basic idea of what it means to do good. And everyone is also able to recognize that there is something wrong with human beings. Now, from another perspective, though, there are people in the Middle East who believe that it's perfectly fine to run around killing people who don't believe in what you believe in. And we know that that's obviously not how, we should be actively treating each other. So basically, what we're trying to say, though, is that they believe with their whole hearts that that's okay. You know, they've been raised to believe that, but they are still kind of held responsible for their own actions. And so really what it comes down to is the nature of like, okay, look, they believe with their heart that what they're doing is the right thing, but they are putting other people in jeopardy. And they're doing it in a way
even though they are following the laws of their society, it might not be, lawful in other people's eyes.
Exactly. And so, like, and it's not just that, it's the fact that, like, they actively do things at the expense of other people. They're failing to really adhere to exactly what lawful good should be. True goodness would actually take into account the fact that no human being has any right to treat another one like garbage. And so, like, I mean, we could really get into that. It is a pretty dense topic, and it's really hard to cover it without, like, upsetting 50,000 people. But, like, it is true that human beings have a real problem when it comes to committing true lawful goodness, because everyone has a perspective on what they think is good, but then there's always what is actually good. And so what is actually good is, self-sacrifice, making sure that the person next to you is okay, even if that means that you may not be okay in the long term. But then really what it comes down to is how well that person understands.
I remembered a very good example I had for what a lawful good person would do. Remember the market apple boy thing?
The market. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, in this situation, this is what a lawful good person would be. Say you saw someone at a market selling some apples, and then you notice a little boy, and he looks to be very hungry, and he snags an apple from the stand, and he tries to steal it. And then the person selling the apples has caught them. You could either let the little boy get in trouble for it,
which would be technically legal.
Yes, take the apple away from the little boy and give it back to the person at the stand, so the little boy would starve, but the person in the stand wouldn't lose the money for that. Or you could, appease everyone, and you could pay the person at the stand while letting the little boy get away without punishment or without going hungry. But you could also try to teach the boy a lesson.
Right. And so, like, we actually covered, that was one of our longest subjects, actually,
Yes.
because we covered that one from an extreme biblical perspective, and that
Yeah.
went on for a while. We
Mhm.
can do that on here as well, because honestly,
Also, I think we could probably use the little boy scenario for a few other alignments.
that's true. Yeah. So,
Could also do the Mortal Kombat fatality.
okay, so we're gonna have to
Liu
take
Kang one, the splits.
We're going to have to take a quick intercession in a couple minutes, but we'll try and cover this last one before we go on intercession. So basically, okay, so the boy, right? What is he doing wrong? He's stealing, right? Now, why is he doing that? Well,
Because
he's hungry and he needs food to survive. It's a basic human need. And no one is trying to penalize him for being hungry. They are trying to penalize him for going about acquiring the need to fulfill in the wrong way.
But it is also a young child, so they don't really have many other ways of obtaining food.
Exactly. And so really what it comes down to is, look, the kid does obviously deserve a punishment. He did steal from someone else what is not his.
But the reason for stealing was justified in some people's eyes.
Right. So, but what we have to remember is that just because one person thinks something is okay doesn't necessarily mean another will. And so that's where appeasing everyone kind of comes into play, but it's kind of about more than just that. Like, think about it like this. When we were covering this, basically from a certain perspective, that's exactly what I think that Jesus did when he chose to die on the cross for people. I believe that we kind of could be viewed as the child, where we definitely need things in this world. And, from a certain perspective, it's justified that we steal, or that, so-and-so must be destroyed so that I can live on and my family can live on. I have people that I have to take care of. But from God's perspective, he thinks that's wrong. He doesn't like that. He believes that human beings should actively watch out for and care for each other. So everyone in the scenario with the boy has something to learn. And I think that Jesus kind of embodies the retributive and restorative justice that we're talking about there, because the retributive justice is that he actively pays for what the boy stole. The man pays with his own money, but then simultaneously he is willing to give the boy what he needs, the food that is required for him to live, whilst simultaneously paying the price for what he stole. And so I think that that's a near perfect picture of exactly what Jesus does for human beings. And I think that that is why to God lawful good is exactly that, because lawful good embodies both retributive and restorative aspects of justice, not just one or the other. Because if you only have restorative justice, then you can't technically you wouldn't necessarily, restorative justice without retributive justice would not be justice at all.
No.
You would be, because you don't really know exactly what the person has to pay for, therefore you don't know what you're restoring.
Yeah.
And so, like, that was a pretty hefty topic, and we covered a very summarized version of that. But we need to take a break so that we can continue without mentally dying before the session is over.
Yeah.
And when
I think it started off pretty rocky, but we got used to it more by the end.
Exactly. So
that
we'll come back.
The next episode will be better.
Yes, we'll come back after a quick break, and then it's going to be question and answer time with Shine, the man that murders deers with his repeater.
I just accidentally missed my tomahawk throw by a centimeter, and now everybody in the entire facility knows where I am.
Do you think we should do questions and answers with the remaining time, or we should start that in the next episode?
Well,
the remaining time.
My question is,
no.
Who's letting all these pineapples get out of control? I want to know who's in control of all these lemons, too. I don't like the way they're looking. Pretty menacing to me, if you ask me.
I spilled lemonade all on my bed today.
They're trying to escape. They're going to extract through the carpets of your house and become a crazy DNA, evolve into a Terminator of basically infection and hunt you and your family down. So just pour hand sanitizer everywhere you step.
Okay.
You saying
We will come back
Or death will be
after
there.
a quick intercession. Thank you for listening so far. Okay.
Goodbye.
So we're back from our break. We are mentally dead. We are slowly losing our minds. So Shane's gonna ask us some questions. So Shane, just like throw us some questions about what our last session was before
If you were
our
paying
break.
attention.
You can tell Bob Ross is jamming with you back there.
I have a demon in my brain.
I think that the boys are pretty good constructive an idea to follow or take on, because there's a whole other side to it that you can link down that's almost like a root of a tree, and it's personalities of people that will take it different ways. With the kid with the apple, there'd be some people who'd be like, let the dude do that, or I don't know. Sorry.
No, that's really good. That's like awesome. What you said there is actually perfect, because like Sophia was talking about, sorry,
Who's Sophia?
I'm still getting used to using our code names, even though that like.
You're gonna have to delete that part out because I got a secret identity going right now.
Oh my gosh! All right, so
I'm serious about
dude,
this.
this
I'm
is so-
starting my artist career.
Not this one.
So like Lad was talking about, it was most people that come from different that come from different backgrounds. Speaking of backgrounds, drog. Yeah. So speaking of,
This was my art piece for school.
that's hilarious. So like, I mean, when you think about it, a lot of people have different ideas on like what their experiences mean in terms of these ideals, and so oftentimes your experiences act as like this filter, right, through which you kind of develop an ideology. And really what we want is to develop healthy ideologies, because everyone has bad experiences. Everyone has flaws and fatal wounds. And so the thing that we want to avoid is letting those fatal wounds kind of act as an excuse to do wrong things, which we'll get into that mindset in another video. But like Shane said, you know, the analogy that we used is perfect for a lot of different people. So Shane, why don't you give us another question?
There could be you could beat the kid beyond recognition for stealing the apple. Take it to the absolute max. You could surprise
that would be
adoption,
chaotic evil. That's going to be our very last episode.
Yeah. No, but like, okay.
I could draw a strip comic of like the kid getting absolutely beaten up because he just stole an apple. Like I'll draw like the U.S. Army like pulling in just everybody, the Avengers, everyone just like completely dogpile slams him.
What? Yeah, no, like I mean,
just have Doom Guy come in and kick him like 20 times in the ribs.
I actually think that'd be chaotic neutral, because it's like,
you want to steal
this really help
apples?
either party.
I mean, like when you think about it, though, the child obviously deserves like a punishment. But
what if a doctor was coming after him, and like that was his only way to keep the doctor away?
That was a good one.
And the guy just like, no, you can't do that. He was like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Okay, but listen, I don't believe in punishing people for being humans. Like, hunger is a normal thing, and if you are facing hunger and you have an opportunity to end that and help yourself live, it is not a bad thing that you stole food.
Right. But like, no.
If
Okay,
it's a
so, see,
kid,
that
then yeah, I would help it
that's
out.
that's
But
where
if it's
that's where
it's
I
a
would have
grown
to
adult,
disagree, just because like
sorry.
everyone, it's not okay to steal. Like, imagine,
Yeah.
if we took it a step further and said those apples are that guy's livelihood, then
Yeah.
it's not okay. It's not
Yeah,
okay
because
to
like
steal.
that guy could have family at home, and he could be like, "Oh, I'm
Exactly.
sorry, I can't put food on our table because some other starving person had to take all the apples."
Right, but then when you think about it, like, so the kid obviously deserves
I'm on fire.
punishment, not because he was hungry. It's not somehow wrong or sinful
Mhm.
that he was hungry.
Yes.
That's
This dude
not
just dived
what
in front
was
of his
happening.
friend to save
What
him,
is
but they
wrong
both
or
died.
sinful is the fact that he chose to fulfill that desire in a specific way that intrudes upon another person's life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, we're not trying to say that, oh, the kid needs to be killed because, like, we need to post snipers up on rooftops and like shoot kids that steal apples. No.
Just a
Like,
whole bunch of street kids pulling off like Payday 2 tactics for an apple.
yeah, like, okay, guys, we gotta come up with a plan or we're gonna get shot.
Juggernaut! People are like diving over fruit stands.
But like, I mean, there is, lad. What are you doing,
Did you say the lad?
lad?
Shani, look.
Can I change my nickname?
Sure.
Can I be Bobby Two Pistols? Because
Sure.
that's my Red Dead character's name.
Fine, we'll go with that. I'm gonna start
You
calling you
cannot
Bobby.
make up your mind. Your name's gonna
At
change
least it's
every
not-
episode.
At least, yes, next episode my name is Mike Hawk. Because that was my other name.
Oh
Okay.
yes, and also, lad is a code name for something that you guys might learn later, like a million years in
You
the future.
said
so
that
stay
3
tuned.
times.
I
You
know.
are Vlad. I know you are a Russian spy from Cold War. I
I'm
know
literally
who you
slaw
are,
squatting
Vlad.
right now.
Okay, so getting back on track anyway. Sorry, you guys are going to be dealing with our foolishness on this podcast very
We are
regularly.
a crazy train
Don't
on a
question
crazy
my
rail.
motives. Cool again.
Ozzy Osbourne, let me bite off the head of a bat real fast.
That's how Corona started.
Okay. Well,
I don't know why
when-
people can't
Ozzy
just eat a
Osbourne back
burger,
at
bro.
it again.
okay, so basically what we're trying to kind of say here with all of this is that it's
Is eat
really,
normal food. You don't need to eat bats.
Okay, real quick, I'm
You
sorry.
got the
to distract you,
entire
but
world
listen,
on
The
lockdown.
story
because you
story
wanted to eat
behind
a bat.
Ozzy is that
Because you
somebody
really
threw a bat on stage and he thought it was like a rubber bat, so he was gonna bite the head off of it, and then it started bleeding. And
And
he
then it was
oh,
real.
it's a real bat. Okay.
It was all a lie.
enough
He did it anyways,
sidetrack.
and he just wanted to get Pete off of his back.
oh
so
my
he doesn't lose
gosh.
all of his money.
Okay, guys.
Any more questions about lawful goodness?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. I mean,
How
like,
many oranges does it need to be till it is orange?
I don't know. I guess, okay, one question that I've heard a lot on the idea of lawful goodness is basically, how do we, is there any easy way, to effectively police a person's internalized conflict? Because going into that situation, it's very possible that the boy was conflicted about what he was about to do, right? Maybe he was genuinely considering that the guy has a family and has people he has to provide for, but he's hungry. And so, like, really, there's no way to effectively police a person's thoughts or what they're thinking, and it's always difficult to tell. But I think that that's part of what makes the ethic of mercy so interesting, is that mercy doesn't necessarily appeal to a person unless that person is already in a spot where they're undeserving of it.
Kanye West type beat.
Okay. But like, thinking about it, like, I know that I've definitely come across people in my life who are undeserving of help, and I myself am undeserving of help. But what makes those times so interesting is seeing how God kind of wants to be merciful to me, either through someone or through me to someone else. And I think that, the idea that, a person's thoughts can still be malicious and God still kind of want to act restoratively towards them is very beautiful. Like, I think that it's part of what motivates people to, I don't know, I mean, it's tough to say. It's what motivates me to be kind towards others. So, like, I think that really strikes a chord with that story in particular, because you can modify it in so many ways to make it fit in accordance with another person's outlook on life in a way. Not to the point at which you start justifying wrongful actions, but
Oh,
like
that's an alligator.
where
Sorry.
you where you command alligators. So like another
Oh my! I just got you.
Oh my way.
Ah. I just tried to cross the river hunting for this like
okay.
huge albino alligator, and then all I
Oh,
feel was
that
my entire controller vibrate, and then my guy like looks down, and then all I see is like his head get eaten, and then just start barrel rolling underneath the water, and I respawn, and there's a dead dude next to me. All right.
Okay. So one
Oh,
of the
good.
characters that we really discussed in depth for this topic, and the other topics going forward, was actually Spider-Man. Surprise, surprise.
yes, yes.
And so like when we did that, we really tried to consider exactly what type of person that character is, and we came to the conclusion that he can fit into this category, like at his core, meaning that the ideals that he lives by were passed down to him by someone else, but the way that he enacts those ideals portrays a different ideology.
Yeah.
So like
No, eat pineapples.
Spider-Man obviously inherited the idea that he has a moral obligation to defend the weak,
Yeah.
and he utilizes that as a way to push
Oh, I think
himself
it's
forward
big.
into doing and
Yes.
committing acts of kindness, despite the fact that he may not necessarily feel like doing that at the time, which
Yeah.
I think is a nearly like a nearly biblical idea, because I really look at that and I think, like, you know, having a moral obligation towards other people is something the Bible does talk about. And I think that human beings definitely do have an obligation to one another, for sure. So I'm like, we had a hard time really finding characters who fit into this category,
Yeah.
because oftentimes they have a very it's very hard to find characters that we can say fit into this category cleanly.
Yeah. Because even Spider-Man, because he the way he is inside, he is lawful good because he has a set of code that he does live by, and everything he does is with this code. But the way he like acts out on it is more of a chaotic good way,
Right.
and so he kind of meets in the middle where like he isn't as good at some things, so some of his actions tend to be more impulsive, but his internalization is more of like a lawful, orderly way.
Right. Yeah.
So,
So
and he is indiscriminately good towards everyone, so he is also neutral good.
yeah. Oh, you know what? I think a character that we could discuss next time would actually be John Marston for neutral good.
All right.
We could do that next time. So
Oh, there he is.
I think that really what we have to sort of consider is the idea that, like, another thing that we'll be discussing as we go through these episodes is we're actually going to try and tackle things from the perspective of video games, because video games
Oh,
kind of
I
help
died again.
to establish a person's, like, a lot of psychiatrists believe that a person's input into fiction can often be a window into how they actively view the world. And we kind of want to tackle things from that perspective to see exactly what we can determine as right and wrong about that psychological debate. And so I think that with that, we've covered about everything we can on lawful good right now.
Yeah.
We definitely will be delving deeper into this topic.
As we go along through other episodes, I'm sure we'll get more ideas about lawful good. We'll probably go
right,
off on a
because I mean, the point of all of this is to really see how these ideologies come into conflict with each other as well as interact with each other. Which is why we're glad that we're trying to explain these from biblical standpoints and from standpoints also of characters that are in fiction at certain points. Because, and from historical, well, Bible crosses into, okay, whatever. Point being, we're really trying to tackle this from a lot of different perspectives because these ideologies have ways of interacting and they have ways of conflicting each other.
Yes,
and those conflicts are often centered around the two ideologies striving for the same goal in completely different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get into that, that'll probably be an entirely different subject in and of itself, but know that we will definitely you'll be seeing hints of those clashes throughout this series. And I think that with that, we've just about covered everything we can, guys.
Sweet.
Okay, then. So tune in next time, and we'll have another episode out, probably on Wednesday. So
Don't eat my horse.
Again. And don't eat Shane's horse.
I'm going to die.
But yeah, thanks again, guys, for tuning in. Bye-bye. Hey guys, Spidey here again. So thank you for listening in if you did, and please let us know if there's anything we can improve on. I myself kind of felt something clawing at me while we were making this one. So let me know if there's anything that you can show us that we should be expanding on a little more. Help us and give us resources to utilize so we can do more research and bring you guys better content. Please help us. Subscribe if you can, if you want to. We are trying to attempt to make this thing like a career thing that we want to do, but first things first, we have to make sure that we produce content that you guys enjoy. So we will continue this series. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you guys have a blessed day. Thanks again. Innocent, all your sin comparable to licorice. The God will show you interest. He sent his son to shed his blood for wickedness.